Morai v'Rabotai, when we think about legendary leaders of the past century, I think we can all agree that the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Henoch Leibowitz, will make it towards the top of the list. As we all know, the Rosh Yeshiva was a very young man when he took over for his illustrious father. And he took his father's vision of spreading Torah across America and made that his lifelong mission. And slowly but surely, with great siyata d'shmaya, the Chofetz Chaim Yeshiva has become a tremendous force in the Olam HaTorah, a great leader in the Olam HaTorah, with branches and affiliates throughout the country that not only advocate Limud HaTorah, not only excel in Limud HaTorah, but they advocate and they excel in Harbatzat Torah and Kiruv Chokim. Something that's really unmatched in other yeshivot. Something that's tremendously testimony to what the Rosh Yeshiva did over here. You saw his vision become a reality before our very own eyes. Morai v'Rabotai, while Rav Henoch was starting his revolution here in America, Chacham Ovadia Yosef, Zecher Tzadiv Kodesh Levacha, started his own revolution in Eretz Yisrael. It was a revolution that eventually found its way to America and Canada, Brazil, France, London, Mexico, Argentina, and many other parts of the world. It started in the 1940s, the late 1940s, when the State of Israel was created. And the early 1950s as well, when there was a great wave of immigration of Sephardic Jews to Eretz Yisrael. And Chacham Ovadia saw with great pain how religious and traditional Jews from Yemen, Morocco, and other such countries made aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, but they experienced a tremendous yeridah b'ruchaniyut. The secular establishment that was in control of the country, that was in charge of the country, they tore them away from Torah and mitzvot. They took the little boys, they cut off their peot, they sent them to secular schools that, in essence, mocked their holy traditions. And they accused them of being primitive and old-schooled, old-fashioned. And they basically destroyed the tmimut of these children. They destroyed the simplicity of these children of Emunat Chachamim and Ahavat Torah. And they started guiding them to a life of nationalism without Torah Judaism. And at the time, Chacham Ovadia was about 29, 30, 31. He just finished his stint of being a Rav in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, which is a story b'fnei atzmo. But he finished his stint over there and he saw this. He saw what was taking place in Eretz Yisrael. And he started formulating a vision of his own. It was a vision where he would see these very kids and their children becoming Baalei Teshuvah, becoming Bnei Torah, becoming Avrichim, becoming Rabbanim, Dayanim, Rashei Yeshivot. And Morai v'Rabotai, that vision was his lifelong mission. He took that to heart and he put his life into it. And I believe, as we sit here today, after witnessing approximately 1 million people coming to his levaya, with tens of thousands locked out of Yerushalayim due to danger and security threats, and after we see that there's approximately 40 to 50,000 boys and girls in his Reshet HaChinuch for children, and you see that he has a few thousand Avrichim, and a few thousand Bnei Torah that are sitting and learning B'atmada Yomam V'Layla, Morai v'Rabotai, I believe we can all agree that his vision has indeed become a reality. I tell everyone over the past week that it's not a coincidence that Chacham Ovadia passed away Parashat Lech Lecha. We know there's a famous Chazaq that states that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was unhappy with the world, was unhappy with humanity until Avraham Avinu came along. And the Mefarshim ask, Ma baya im Noach? What's the problem of Noach? The Torah tells us, Noach is Tzaddik, Tamim, Haya B'dorotav. And what about Yeshivat Shem Ve'ever? It was a prestigious yeshiva. In fact, Avraham Avinu's own daughter-in-law, Rivka Imenu, she went to them to ask and inquire about her problems with the pregnancy. What, Noach wasn't enough of an Achad Ruach, Shem Ve'ever weren't enough? So we know the famous answer of Moshe Feinstein, which is very relevant to what we're discussing here today. Rav Moshe Feinstein says as follows. He says, yes, it's true that there were great tzaddikim, kedushim and teorim before Avraham Avinu, no question about it. However, they kept their kedusha to themselves. They kept their chokhmah to themselves. They didn't go out to the people to educate, to inspire, to prove that there's a creator to the universe. If you had a she'elah, you had a question, you had to come to them, because they didn't come to you. And although you may be considered a tzaddik, but you're not fulfilling your mission. That's how what gives the HaKadosh Baruch Hu nachat ruach. Avraham Avinu, on the other hand, was kadosh, tahor, gadol, but Morai v'Rabotai, hu yarad el ha'am, he went down to the people. Avraham Avinu went down to educate, to show the way, to guide, to inspire, to prove. Et ha-nefesh asher asu becharan. That was Avraham Avinu. It wasn't just about himself. It was about going out to the public, going out to the tzibur, teaching people that are lower than him that there is more to life than what they think. Morai v'Rabotai, Chacham Ovadia Yosef was without a doubt the Avraham Avinu of our generation. He was a tremendous gaon. He was an ilui. He was baki bechol chadrei Torah. Kol raz lo anisle. He was a fearless posek. But Morai v'Rabotai, despite that resume of his, he didn't find it beneath his level to go to the people. He would go from country to country, from city to city, keilah to keilah, shul to shul. He would knock on doors. We're talking about a man that was a great posek who would go knocking on people's doors like the little activists of Lev La'achim. He would knock on their doors and he would try to encourage parents to send their kids to yeshivot. He would discuss the importance of Taharat HaMishpacha, of Kashrut, Tzitzit, Tefillin, beauty of Shabbat. There is a Borei Olam. We're talking about a man that was a tremendous posek, the Gdol Hador that went down to the people in a fashion that's almost unheard of. Morai v'Rabotai, Chacham Ovadia was without question the Avraham Avinu of our generation. You know, it says, Dor Dor v'Dor Shav, Dor Dor v'Chachamav, Dor Dor u'Manhigav. Every generation has its darshanim, it has its chachamim, it has its manhigim. If any of you listen to the Hespedim in Eretz Yisrael, which was given by all Gdolei Yisrael of all stripes, you had the Rosh Yeshiva, the Porat Yosef, Chacham Shalom Cohen, Chacham Tzadka, and you had the Rosh Yeshiva of Panovich, and you had the Rosh Yeshiva of Ateret Yisrael, you had the Admor Mibez, Admor Misans. They all echoed the same exact points. And they said, Dor Dor v'Dor Shav, Dor Dor v'Chachamav, Dor Dor u'Manigav. Every generation has its leaders. It's like every generation has a Rav Moshe Feinstein. Every generation has a Chacham Metzina Bashul. They have a Rav Eliashiv. They're the poskim of the generation. Every generation has a Rav Noach Weinberg, has a Mekarev v'Chokim, Rav Uri Zohar, Mekarev v'Chokim. But only one in few generations has a person like Rav Ovadia Yosef who was a hybrid of the two. He was a Rav Eliashiv and a Rav Noach Weinberg at the same time. He was a Gdol Hador in Popsak, and he's a Gdol Hador in Keruv v'Chokim. Something that's unheard of, something you don't find. But that's the person that we lost. That's the man that we lost only a few days ago. You know, when we talk about his Amelut B'Torah, his Amelus was tremendous. He was such a matmid. From a young age, it was recognized. Everyone saw it. All the Gdolei Yerushalayim were awed by his diligence, by his Yirat Shamayim and Avat Torah combined together. And, you know, he used to eat the sugya, walk with the sugya, sleep with the sugya. It was part of his life. When he wrote Hilchot Avilut 3-4 years ago after his brother passed away, he had terrible back pains. Terrible. He had a fall, he had terrible back pains. And I asked his family, איך HaRav התפיס 3 ספרים? How did he print 3 books? And Hilchot Avilut of close to 1,500 pages in such a short time. And they said exactly that. Hu ochel, hu yoshen, hu holech, Hilchot Avilut. That's it. Once he's dealing with something, that is him until he's done with the topic. That was the Amelut that he had. That's the kind of focus he had in his learning. There's a famous story where Chacham Ovadia was sitting and learning in his house. Anyone of you ever been to his house before? Anyone had a zechut? Oh, if you ever go to his house, Morai v'Rabotai, you'll notice that the whole house is full of sfarim. I mean, from wall to wall, there's not an inch of space. Even between the door and the ceiling, there will be sfarim. Every single area of his house. They say he had approximately 40,000 sfarim in his house. Not like some guys that just buy a whole set of everything, so the bookshelf looks very nice. They were all used, and he knew most of them by heart. So one time he had to get a sefer from the top shelf. He got his little ladder, climbed up the shelf, and starts analyzing the sefer, reading, looking through it, half hour, 40 minutes, hour, hour and a half. Approximately 2 hours he stood there on the ladder. He finished what he had to do. He closes the sefer, he puts it back in the shelf, and as he's turning around to go back to his table, he forgot that he was standing on a ladder. So he took a step right into midair, and he fell right to the ground. He had a cast for about 3 months. Morai v'Rabotai, Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein was telling over that when his father-in-law, Rav Elyashiv Zatzal, went to visit the Rav, Bikur Cholim, he stayed there for an extended period of time, longer than usual. So Rav Zilberstein asked his father-in-law, why were you there for so long? Ma pesher hadavar. Usually you walk in, you say about Torah, Refuah Shlema, Shalom Yisrael, you leave. Why did you stay there longer than usual? So Rav Elyashiv told him, I wasn't visiting just any chole. I was visiting a man that's chole b'Torah. He's chole out of Torah. For you to stand up on a ladder, forget you on a ladder and fall off, I wanted to be around him a little longer. Morai v'Rabotai, that's the kind of limud. When he was sitting on a topic, the phone didn't exist, his friends didn't exist. It was him and the Sefer. It was him and Abaye and Rava. It was him and the Rambam and the Rashba and Rabbi Kiva Eger. That was Rav Ovadia's Hatmada in Torah. If any of you saw 4 years ago when Rav Ovadia fell and he hurt his back, I went to visit the Rav. I went to tell him, Kvod HaRav, I want you to know everything we do with Chazaq in Queens is B'zchut HaRav, and we told him how he inspired us. And the Rav felt very good, but he saw he was in tremendous pain. Tremendous pain. He had a difficult time walking, difficult time sitting. And around that time period, Rav Pinchas Chaim Scheinberg went to visit the Rav. The Rav Scheinberg was one of the Gdolei Poskim. He was a Gaon Adir, if I'm not mistaken, he was a Mashgiach here in the Yeshiva going back 50 years ago. So Morai v'Rabotai, you have the two Gdolim sitting there. The video of this meeting is all over. And you see Rav Ovadia asking him, Kvod HaRav, daven for me. Titpalel alai, korev li agav, my back is hurting. And Rav Scheinberg says, Yeh ratzon yishav refuah shlema. And Rav Ovadia is like, no, אני לא יכול ללמוד תורה, I can't learn. korev li agav, אני לא יכול ללמוד תורה. And Rav Scheinberg tells him, Bezrat Hashem, you have a refuah shlema. And Rav Ovadia starts crying, but korev li agav, b'glal ha'avonot sheli, because of my sins. And Rav Scheinberg is saying, Al tivkeh, it was the avonot sheli, Al tivkeh. And Rav Scheinberg starts crying. And then you have here these two giants of Torah sitting together, crying. We're talking about 190 years of life amongst the two of them, sitting and crying over the fact that he couldn't learn Torah b'atmada the way he used to. Why? Because his back was hurting him. Morai v'Rabotai, the tzar that he had when he couldn't learn was a real tzar. Mamash, he couldn't function because he couldn't learn Torah properly. That's the kind of milut that he had. I heard from one of the rabbis in Brooklyn that one time, he was giving a Hesped over there, that one time, Ovadia came to New York. He came several times. And he was staying by this rabbi's house. I think it was Rabbi Ozeri. And he was staying by his house. And what happened was, Ovadia walks to the house and he tells him, can you show me my bedroom? Okay, Kvod HaRav, come ahead, upstairs, it's right over here. What was he looking for? The pillow, to make sure it was comfortable, the blankets. He looked around the room. He says, do you have a nightlight maybe? A little lamp, something? So yeah, Kvod HaRav, I take care of it, no problem. Okay, he brings a little nightlight. He says, put it in the closet so it doesn't disturb us when we're sleeping. And baya. Do you have maybe a chair that we can have in the room as well? Yeah, no problem. Brings the chair, brings it up to the room. The next morning, the Rabbanit, Alei Shalom, tells the host, so you gave my husband a little lamp and he gave him a chair. You should know that the whole night after the Seudah, the Rav locked himself up in the closet and he sat and learned in the closet. He had no window, he had no air. Masitalo, what'd you do to him? But in reality, the Rav did not want to learn downstairs. Why? He didn't want it to be seen like his gava. He sits and learns all Friday night. Oh, make sure the library lights are on, make sure everything's available. He asked for a nightlight as if he's scared of the dark. Right? Give me a chair, maybe he needs to put on his shoes or something. And he sat there the whole night, Morai v'Rabotai, sitting and learning B'atmada in his closet. With no air, with no nothing. Chacham David Yosef told me, Ovadia Yosef told me that his father almost never slept on Friday nights. During the week he would go to sleep 2, 3 in the morning, and Friday nights he couldn't sleep. Why? Because the Ha'arat Torah, the Ben Ish Chai writes, Limud on Friday night, on Shabbat is 1,000 times greater than during the week. How can I go to sleep, he used to say. He would almost never sleep on Friday nights. He would learn hour after hour after hour after hour to Shacharit. That was his derech. His other son, Rav Yitzchak, told me, he said that his father would never ever go shopping for anything. Shoes, clothes, nothing. So how did he get his new clothes? The family would call the tailor, the shoe man, whoever it may be, call him to the house, give an extra tip. And the Rav would be sitting in his house learning. And as he's learning, they come and they lift up his arms to try on one suit. Right? And if it looks good, they say, HaRav, move forward a little bit. They push him forward, they put in the other arm. And as he's delving into the Sugya, Morai v'Rabotai, that's exactly how they chose a suit for him, clothes for him. Same thing with his shoes. The kids would help out and try on different shoes. He was mamash ma'amik b'Torah. The Rabbanit once told over, she told over to his household, that when the Chacham would come home really late at night, she would leave food on the stove for him. And one night, he comes home really late, he eats what he thought was the food, and the next morning she asked him, HaRav, achalta? He's like, yeah, I ate last night. And she noticed that the starch that she was making for the laundry was missing. He didn't eat his food, he ate the starch. And he said, didn't even realize what he's eating. Morai v'Rabotai, we're talking about a man that Olam Hazeh was non-existent for him. It was Kol Kulo Torah Yirat Shamayim. That's all that counted for him. He would learn with such atmada. You should know, with all the trips that he made around the world and to the different cities in Israel, Chodesh Elul, Chodesh Al-Chamim HaSelichot, he will go from city to city every night, 5, 6 cities in Israel, to speak to people with long hair and earrings and tattoos, to encourage them. He will go to 5, 6 cities every single night. He had a special helicopter that took him around the country, 5, 6 cities every night of Chodesh Elul. And throughout the ride, he would be sitting and learning Torah. His son Rav David told me that his father finished Shas many times just by traveling. Whether it's on the plane, whether it's in the car, whether it's in a helicopter, he would go through, he would finish Sugyot upon Sugyot just by waiting between Mincha and Arvit as a little kid. You have a little break sometimes. Morai v'Rabotai, his breaks between Kiddush till washing, everything was used for Limud Torah. That's a kind of addiction. His wife used to say, my husband to the Sfarim is like a drunk man to vodka. Right? He can't let go of the vodka. My husband cannot let go of the Sfarim. That's who Chacham Ovadia was. Ahavat Yisrael, Ahavat Torah, it was legendary. It was something lo me'olam hazeh. You know, the last 6 months of the Rav were probably the toughest of his life. We all know that his son had a terrible machala and he passed away. And also we have the whole Gzerat HaGiyus, where they're trying to take yeshiva boys like you, right, and take you out of the yeshiva and have some sort of system where you join the army in Eretz Yisrael. It's a whole debate over there, right, wrong, but the Olam HaTorah obviously is 100% against it. And you should know that this Gzerat HaGiyus caused the Rav tremendous tsar. Tremendous tsar, he couldn't sleep at nights. Rav Shmuel Auerbach told over at the Hesped, he said, I went to visit him several times in the past 6 months, and he said, Yam shel dmaot. Yam shel dmaot will come out when he would talk about this topic. In fact, when the Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, came to be Menachem Avel, when Rav Ovadia's son passed away, Rav Ovadia sat there, and he started breaking down, getting very emotional. And he tells the Prime Minister, Ani betzar ptirat beni, I have tsar over losing my son. But the tsar that you're causing me with the giyus is much greater than losing my child. Netanyahu at the time kept quiet for a second, and then he saw the Rav was waiting for an answer. And he told him, Ani lo bati bishvil zeh. I didn't come for this. I come to be menachem you. Rav Ovadia passed away recently. Now Netanyahu comes to be menachem his children. And his kids are a little tough. So Rav David wasn't going to let that pass by. And Rav David tells Bibi Netanyahu, He says, I want you to know that my father is still waiting for your answer. Why did you not give my father an answer that day? What are you doing with the Giyus? Why are you putting Olam HaTorah b'tzar? And they attacked him, and they questioned him, and this time he just remained silent. And Rav David said, I want you to know the tzar that you caused my father the last few months of his life is tzar that you cannot even be mita'er. To think that you're going to take, they have this rule, 1,000 Elohim will sit and learn Torah all day long. Everyone else goes to the army. Right? Morai v'Rabotai, the tzar, we hear about this, okay, beseder, you know, Baruch Hashem, we're in America, it's not a big deal. But Morai v'Rabotai, this is protecting Am Yisrael as a whole. This is tremendous. But this is the tzar that the Rav had over this matter. You know, the sensitivity the Rav had for Agunot was legendary. Any questions of Agunot in Eretz Yisrael, people knew, the Gedolei Yisrael knew that he was able to solve it. What he did in 1973, after the Yom Kippur War, was something like Rav Ilan Meirov said, that only a man with tremendous siyata d'shmaya and broad shoulders could take care of. There were over 900 women whose husbands were missing. After the war. Now, they're tied up. Did they die? Probably did. Is there proof? Is there ochachot? And the Rav sat, not for a few weeks, for months after months after months after months. Yomam v'layla, dealing with every single case with detectives and investigators and different soldiers that were there and listening to the testimony for month after month after month, Yomam v'layla, with tears as he's going through the cases. Because some of the Bachurim, Rav Ilan Meirov told me, some of the Bachurim that died were Bachurim from Hesped Yeshivot that went to fight in the war. And Rav Ovadia knew them because he tested them a few weeks earlier in Yoredea. So he remembered their names. And he would sit there and cry and cry. And b'savos shel he was matir every single lady. Every single woman came out, muteret litchaten. Morai v'Rabotai, this takes a lot of responsibility. It takes also a lot of Ahavat Yisrael to put your reputation on the line to go and save these agunot. Because you know what? Many people didn't like it, but he knew all the poskim, he knew all the drachim, and he sat down with everyone he had to sit down with, and he touched upon every single case during that time period. 14 years ago, at the Levaya, they told over that 14 years ago, the Rav had his first heart attack. And they rushed him to the hospital, and Baruch Hashem, the situation was stabilized. Everything was calm. And they said they had to put a stent in the artery to widen it up. And the Rav heard about this, and he says, I want to go home. I want to go home. Was he scared of the surgery? Well, everything will be okay. No, I want to go home. I have to go home for a few hours. And they were going back and forth. And they're saying, HaRav, it's necessary. You got to have it. He's like, I'm not denying. I want you to do this to me. Let me just go home for 3 hours. I'm in the middle of discussing, of learning a topic, of writing a tshuva for an aguna. I have about 3 more hours. I'll be done with her. Let me just finish it. Who knows if I'll come out alive after the surgery? And who will take care of it? Would you take care of it? Would you take care of it? Who's going to take care of it? So what are they supposed to do? They saw the Rav was so passionate. Go home, take care of it, and they went back to the hospital. Morai v'Rabotai, that's what he cared about. His life was coming to an end. He wasn't worried about, no. What about this aguna? Who will take care of her? Who will take care of this case? There's a lot to say, Morai v'Rabotai. I don't want to take away from your seder, Chaz v'Shalom. But I'll just end off with a personal story. Something that, to this day, is just, it's mind-boggling to see the Rav's Ahavat Yisrael and Ahavat Torah. I've had the zechut to be by him many times, Baruch Hashem. And a year and a half ago, I wanted to go, for a she'elah, for a bracha, and etzah, and also a written letter for something. So, I made an appointment to meet the Rav. It was a very short trip to Israel, 4 days. I made an appointment to meet the Rav. I got to the country, and the next thing you know, all over the news, the Rav is not accepting any visitors for a full week. For a full week? I have a wife, I have kids, I have a kehillah. I can't just leave for another week, even though I wouldn't have minded. But my wife is on top of me every time. Coming back. Right? She heard about this. And Morai v'Rabotai, I got pressured as well. That was the ikar of the trip. So I called up the family, I explained to them the dire need of me meeting the Rav. And they told me they'll work it out for me, Baruch Hashem. They said, don't come after Shacharit, because people will see you walking in, they'll get upset. Come while the Rav is learning in his room, in his library. What time? Approximately 12:30 in the afternoon. Seder. as I'm getting ready to go, I started feeling guilty. Why did the Rav not accept any visitors? Because that day he just found out from his oldest son, Rabbi Yaakov, that he has a machala. They never revealed it to him until he got to his later stages, and they told him about it that day. And the Rav wanted to spend the whole week just learning for his refuah shlema, didn't want to have any visitors. So I started contemplating, is it right for me to come along and cause bitul Torah when the Rav asked no? And then I'm telling myself, what do you mean? How could you say he gives you an opportunity to go, you have to go? And I'm having this inner struggle, go, don't go, go, don't go. And eventually I'm not sure if my Yetzer Hara won or my Yetzer Hara Tov won, but I said I'm going. And I made my way to his house. I come in, and again, every time you go, you get awed by all the Sfarim that's around him. But when I walked into his room, you see the Rav. We're talking about a 92-year-old man. Back problems, heart problems, problem with the kidney, stress, whatever it is, all the problems he could have is on him. All the problems of Klal Yisrael is on him. And I walk into his room and you see a man with serenity. Mamash, sitting and chuckling very slowly. He had the Elia Rabbah in front of him, that's what he was reading, and he had another 20 to 25 books open around him. He was going through a sugya in Hilchot Shabbat. And Morai v'Rabotai, you saw a man on a mission. He was working. His eyes were reading, his mouth was murmuring, his hands had a pen, and he had paper to take notes right next to him. Morai v'Rabotai, you saw a thing of beauty. We're talking about a thing I'll never forget. Such hadmada, such amelut, such simcha. Now when they told me to go to the Rav, I started feeling guilty. I'm ruining it. I'm ruining the perfect picture. But I approached the Rav and I expected him to just give me a bracha and tell me, get out, what are you disturbing me? His son, he's learning for his son, who has a terrible disease. And Morai v'Rabotai, when I approached him, beyira, I approached the Rav, he looked at me, besever panim yafot, accepted me, bracha, smack in the cheek, another bracha, looked over what I showed him, another bracha, another smack in the... Mamash, as if it was a regular day in his life. As if he didn't find out about his child being sick, as if he didn't have heart problems. Mamash, as if it's a normal day. And I was there for a good 15-20 minutes. And Morai v'Rabotai, I was absolutely shocked. I went there with pachat, and I came out with such simcha. Such ahavat Yisrael. He could have told me, yes, Ken, beseder, yalla, beserot tovot, Chazaq baruch, lech habayta. But no, he gave me his typical brachot of quoting psukim, and just the love, as if I was his grandchild. That's who the Rav was. Ahavat Yisrael, ahavat Torah, lochem milchemta shel Torah. And although many of you never had a connection to him, if you just go through a tshuva in Yabia Omer, you see the amkut of his tshuvot. It's not just quoting. You see the diyukim that he makes in the poskim, and how he comes to a conclusion. In such a beautiful, like a work of art, starting with the Rishon, the Gemara, Shas Bavli, Shas Yerushalmi, the Rishonim, the Achronim, ad Poskei Hazman. And he gives respect to all the Poskei Hazman, quoting every single one, whether they had his same hashkafot or not his same hashkafot. It was irrelevant. If they had Yirat Shamayim and followed the Shulchan Aruch, Shalom al Yisrael. And Morai v'Rabotai, that's who Chacham Ovadia was. His Ahavat Yisrael was legendary. His Ahavat Torah was legendary. And if we could take maybe one thing, I don't have to give any musar chazon to the Bachurim here. The yeshiva, what they do over here of Limud Torah and Rabbatzat Torah is probably the greatest in the world. But if we could take it to the next level, where you could start having extra Ahavat Yisrael, and trust me, we all have room for improvement, to work on the Lashon Hara, to work on these items. These are items that could bring the Geulah. You know, the Rav, when he learned, and he always stressed it to me a few years ago, when you learn, you got to read, you got to use your mouth, and you got to write. And if you could read, use your mouth, write, and teach it over, oh, there's no greater limud than that. So Morai v'Rabotai, this is who we lost. And Bezrat Hashem, hopefully he could be a Melit Yosef for us. The family actually has a video that he left before he passed away for Am Yisrael. I don't know what he said or what he didn't say. It's going to be published probably the next few days. But one thing I do know was that he fought for the Bachurei Yeshivot to sit and learn all day with no tirdot. That's what he fought for, that's what he believed in. And Morai v'Rabotai, if we could take our learning to the next level, add a few more minutes here, you have a 10-minute break there to add a few more minutes there, and then we'll see the legacy of Chacham Ovadia that just died and behind us, but will continue for many, many more generations. Ad bi'agot tzedek b'ramenu, amen ve'amen.